Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about the best code I've ever seen. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what would you say is the best code that you have ever seen? That's going to be a little bit tricky in terms of like if you're talking about source that I've read or something like that, because I haven't really had much to do with like the, as you can imagine, big open source projects and things like that, because it's not something I've spent on all that much time on. I recall once upon a time though that I've had a few instances where I've gone out of my way to let my coworkers know that I thought that the implementation that they made for a specific feature or something like that was extraordinarily well written. I remember saying that to um, one coworker many years ago who had the it's like one of those horror scenarios where he had a, I can't remember the specific feature now, but I recall it had to do with time, like basically being able to run specific jobs at various time intervals and to get that just right and just so with different time intervals and conditions for when something should run and when it should not run and things like that. That can be a little bit tricky. At least I've always found it to be difficult to work with that. And he had just done it so perfectly, like a very simple interface he created for the functionality that was going to run, very simple, like just exactly the test cases, like does it run exactly at the right time, does it not run like a second early, second late, like because there was some precision needs in there as well. And he had just done it really cleanly, no excess, no nothing. I had like basically nothing to add to it. I thought it just was a really nice solution. But if we talk a little bit more generically in terms of the best code I've ever seen or the best approaches to coding that I've ever seen, I would say for me, who works mostly in web, my absolute favorite pattern, if there is such a thing in terms of how you write source code, would be the idea of the kernel pattern or the approach to doing software. I'm a very big believer in that if you follow that pattern with a modular monolith system, you will by default probably be better off than for most other things. Like in the beginning of things, of course, everything, at least what I was taught in school, is about MVC because, of course, MVC is a very easy pattern to follow. The thing that I usually say that I think that that is when you mature a little bit, because in the beginning you associate MVC with that there is a module folder, a view folder, and a controller folder, then everything goes in there, right? And my argument is that the MVC pattern is not about having those folders. It is about how you layer your application logic, or how you layer, like it's divide the various areas where the controller, for well, most of us can agree to this, where the controller is just the first thing that the network request sees. So the client system that connects to you interacts with the controller, and then the controller uses the model and service layer logic and stuff like that in order to just glue together the business logic and like the data that is necessary. And then the response will be the view, and that can be an HTML page, it can be like JSON or like XML, depends on what the response is supposed to be, right? That model still works, even, it's just a mental model. And so when I grew up a little bit more, I of course questioned this like everybody else, and then I sort of settled on, after learning various patterns, that I believe that my favorite version of this was because, of course, I bought into microservices very early on because they became the big thing, right? When I was in that perfect sweet spot between I've just learned enough coding, so I know what I'm doing, but I'm not so great at it, so I know what I should be doing and like what I should be listening to and what I should avoid. And so I bought into the idea, and it was only after trial and error I came to the realization that the thing I'm trying to achieve with microservices is modularity between my various domains and like the functionality and stuff like that. And then I came to the realization that if I just don't move all that to the network layer, because that is what microservices will do for you, you will move most of the domain to the, because it becomes a network problem, right? And then it's something clicked in me, and I realized, but wait a minute, isn't there a system for us doing this that is already very established, super, super old, which is I argue, the kernel pattern. You have a entry point into your program, and then you have various modules that just you hook in and they load. Like when you start your operating system, you have a start process that loads up all the other services and processes that you have, and that is exactly the pattern. You can move them, so you can have them, they can start up with your computer, or they can not start up with your computer. And so when it's something clicked in my head when I realized if I just have a source folder with all my various modules for the various entities and business logic that I want, and then all I have to do is expose like a controller or something like that from that folder, and then have one single program.cs or main.java, or it doesn't matter which one it is, right? That just is literally, it starts on the server on the port, and then there's just a bunch of imports for the various controllers that are in the modules that I want. I have a super clean and very nice architecture. So for me in web, that was probably the biggest, like, whew, yeah, this is so clean, it's so nice. And my favorite part about it is that if you really do want to do microservices or move stuff out, it is as easy as changing one line of code, like copy pasting the main, like the entry point file and the folder that you want, like the modules that are supposed to go into that other API, and then you can start running that instead, right? And if you have like a load balancer something or a gateway in front, it doesn't matter if it's the same server or if it's 20 servers, you can still, it's very flexible. That's the thing I liked about it. But if we talk about things like, just I remember like just being very impressed with the way that you write that software. It's actually not in web. It is in game development, and it was when I started playing around with, I think it's Amethyst. It was the At the time I was working, I was doing a lot of work with Rust, because I thought Rust, and I still think Rust is conceptually probably the best programming language there is. I wish that we were more into it as a community than we are, but we're simply not there. And at the time I wanted to look into game development within that programming language, and so the one that I found was Amethyst, which was running something that they call Entity Component System, or ECS, which is a software architecture that is at the time. I mean, because I'm not a game developer, guys, at all. Like, I mean, I know some very basic like Unity and I'm learning a little bit about Unreal Engine development and stuff like that. So I'm nowhere near an advanced game developer. So when I heard about ECS, it was new to me. So it took me a while to understand the structure of how it worked. And I remember that when I sort of understood why it was created the way it was, and the intention being that it should model the game world. I even love the part about that. I think, I'm not sure if it's still there, but I remember reading on the FAQ for the specific development framework, that the first question is, can you use this for web? And they say no, basically, because I could immediately understand, like when I understood how beautifully this system of writing code represent, you know, different things within an environment, such as gravity or air, weather conditions, or various entities that that exist in this world. So if you want to model like a physical world of some sort, like your own reality or something like that, it felt to me like this was a beautiful way of doing it. It was so intuitive, and you have these various processes that affect them and so forth, and then you can apply rules to various entities that are within this world and so forth and so forth. You can go and look it up if you want to. It's apparently, as I understood it, very popular in this in-game development, and it was just the most beautiful way, I thought, to basically represent a world. And so immediately I go, I wonder if my reality is done in exactly the same way. Some super entity somewhere in the universe, God or whatever, right, has written all of my universe, the one that we share, right, in ECS. I wonder if it's the same thing. So what I want you to take away from this, that I cannot really remember, apart from like one or two coworkers over the years, where I've thought that their code was just absolutely amazing, where they really did that perfect. Like it's not too complicated. It is, and it's not shabby in any way. It's just perfect. Like I like to say, guys, writing really good software is like filling a glass just to the brim, and they really did it like on the mark. I had no comments, no nothing. It was just really nice to see that they managed to solve the problem, in my opinion, in an absolutely flawless way. And I mean, if I'm gonna be nicer or looser with it, I mean the good people who make most of the tools that I depend on, who have really great ideas and come up with stuff like that, I mean they deserve so much praise for all the work that they've done. Because I mean, hell, my job has become so much easier due to the fact that there are other people out there who are really passionate about something within the software space, and they created libraries and things like that and so forth. And I really do encourage you guys as well. Like, you don't have to give back to this community necessarily in the, you're going to do some patches or pull requests to some repo somewhere. That's pretty nice if you can, but try to follow the same rule, right? Just start by, what is it to say? Learn, earn, return. Those are the three phases of life. So start returning some stuff. This is my one of my ways of doing it. It's not the only way I do it, but I try to follow the same pattern because these people, they deserve so much. And apart from that, I would say that my favorite, one of the best ideas I've ever come across, at by now, at this current state at the very least, would be to approach like modular monoliths and the genius of the kernel pattern, being able to load modules or include them, exclude them from the start from a program. It makes things a lot easier to handle when you're dealing with large systems. And as you can imagine, an operating system is a pretty complicated beast, pretty large stuff. And that pattern, even though it's not exactly the same thing, I found it to really help me when I do my web stuff. And then finally ECS for game development. I'm gonna be like one of those guys on the FAQ who goes like, damn, I understand that this might not be the right thing for a web project, and it's more designed for game development and world creation and things like that, and simulating various phenomenon in an environment. But if you take a look at it, I think you're going to find, if you try to write some games or something like that, that when you understand that you create various processes, like you have characters of different types, and then you have like things like gravity or wind resistance or things like these various processes, right? The way it's structured makes it almost intuitive if you think about your own universe, how the universe gets constructed. You can more or less construct an entire universe with this modeling approach. And I thought it was beautifully designed. Like, whoever came up with it is up there for me with like the guy who came up with the MVC, for example, and so forth and so forth. You have some people who have truly inspired other developers to follow a pattern that they come up with, and it just makes at least my job so much easier. Have a great day.